All right. I've been thinking about this segment all week, so hopefully I don't screw this up. Longevity of running backs. I think that in the dynasty community, I personally believe that there's a big fallacy with the longevity of running backs compared to receivers that's been going around for the past couple of seasons. And I want to start this off with looking at this dude's study. Hold on. Scrappy Lounis is in the way. How do I get him out of here? Oh, geez. I'm screwing everything up now. Hold on a second. All right. Let's start this over. So I think that there's a big fallacy with the way that the dynasty community is valuing older running backs, and most specifically the really talented older running backs. So this dude, Ice One Wiz, 5 years ago, looked at all the running backs from 1987 to 2016 on Pro Football Reference, all the ones that had at least 8 starts and 500 career yards. Right, basically anyone who's going to be relevant in terms of fantasy football. And one of the conclusions of his analysis was that for any of these running backs, but the ones that started 16 games, after 20 games, the wide receivers have about 8 to 10% more shelf life than running backs, which seems pretty high. But when you think about it, if you're someone who plays 10 seasons and you play every game, that's one extra season, which I don't think is as high as the community is making it out to be. And then I feel like when you look further into it and you look at some of the top tier running backs of older, like the mid 2000s, especially, right? Some of these really talented running backs, not Arian Foster, but Ladainian Tomlinson, right? Hall of Fame caliber running back. If you were to sell him at age 26, 25, where not necessarily 25, but 26, I feel like is the age where everyone likes to say, okay, the running back market turns, you got to get out, or they really transition to being an older player. Well, I'm looking back at some of these stats and seeing Ladainian Tomlinson had the best fantasy football season ever in the history of PPR fantasy football at age 27, and then put up another 1,500 or 1,900 all-purpose yards at age 28, another 1,000-yard multiple touchdown season at 29, and was still serviceable at 30. Okay, well, let's go. Priest Holmes. Another dude didn't get started until he was 28, 29, 30. Clinton Portis. Like, I mean, if you're looking on the screen on YouTube, you can see that these guys all have production into their 30s. Sean Alexander had his best season at 28 years old. And I'm just going to scroll through them to really get my point in. Fred Taylor, Jamal Lewis, Tiki Barber, another guy, didn't even get going with his great seasons until he's 27 years old. Adrian James. And it's funny because I looked at a list of who some guy thought the top running backs from the 2000s were. The only guy who didn't have success in that age period of time, like 26 onward, was Ricky Williams, who you can make the argument had just a lot of crap going on off the field. That was one of the reasons for it. And okay, so where am I all going with this? I don't think that every single running back age 26 and beyond is going to be good. I think the ones that are truly talented are going to be good. So where has the narrative come from? Right? Because if all of these good Hall of Fame, borderline Hall of Fame caliber running backs had success later into their careers, why is the community saying that they are going 26, they're going to explode, 27, you have to get out? Well, if you look at the running backs drafted and playing from 2009 to 2014, specifically the ones drafted that would be older about now or the past couple of seasons when Dynasty took off, it is just a 6-year period of garbage in the top 50 picks. It's horrible. So I went through all of the running backs drafted in the top 50 from that 6-year period, 2009 to 2014. I deemed 3 players to be worth their draft capital. One only kind of. That is Mark Ingram, Doug Martin, and Le'Veon Bell. And I can go through the list of busts real quick. or not worth the draft capital. No Sean Moreno, Donald Brown, B.D. Wells, C.J. Spiller, Ryan Matthews, Javid Best, Ryan Williams, Trent Richardson, David Wilson, Isaiah P., Gio Bernard. 2014, there wasn't even one taken in the top 50. But Bishop Sankey was like 51, so it's not like he's necessarily cutting it either.
That list hurts.
Oh my God, it's horrible. And I mean, obviously, with this group of players, you're going to say, well, yeah, running back shelf life isn't great. You know, Ryan Matthews ain't playing until he's 29. I think it takes teams long enough to realize that this guy is not a Hall of Fame talent. You know, he's not. I'd rather pick a new running back. And then on top of the fact, the only good running backs that were around, Mark Ingram is like the only dude that had longevity. Doug Martin had 2 good years and then was basically out of the league, right? Within 5 seasons, he was done right around that 26 age mark. Le'Veon Bell, the other hit, was another dude. Once he left Pittsburgh on that second contract, he had like maybe 1 good year with the Jets. 26, he's done. And then we had to make up for that with the guys like an Arian Foster, who came into the league, had some success, had a ton of injuries. By 26, he's done. So to me, all in all, and this is where, after I'm done, you guys come in with your opinion on this. Jake's going to disagree with me because he's the sell-all running back to 26 guy. But I think that the narrative has gone too far, and there could be some serious arbitrage value opportunity because you look at the classes recently. 2016 running backs, the 2020 running backs, this past group of running backs in 2021, these are some seriously talented running backs that have been into the league, way better than that list of running backs from 2009 to 2014 that I think could have success later into their career. Guys like a Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, and so on. So I think currently the fallacy has gone too far and that really good running backs will have success 26, 27, 28 years old. And the age you have to worry about is 29 and 30 for these super talented guys.
The issue that I have with it is because I do agree with you to some extent where I think it has gone too far in the fact that like guys like Dalvin Cook, you can't, it's a struggle to get a first round pick for Dalvin Cook in a lot of leagues just because one, they can only go to a contender and it immediately cuts the potential trade partners pretty much in half. So it's difficult to find a partner for it, and it's difficult to get a significant value that you feel is worth trading away a guy of Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, guys like that. But at the same time, I think the NFL has changed to an extent. All the guys that had this long careers were all in that early 2000 when a lot of times the best player on your offense was your running back, where you handed the ball into it 30 times a game and that was what you did. Now the game's changed a little bit and it's more pass heavy and teams don't want to pay their running backs. So I think you see running backs change teams more. And I think you see running backs when they change teams, they don't have the same success they did on their original team that drafted them. I think there's a lot of different factors here that just weren't taken into consideration when you're saying, these running backs, obviously the running backs you named, they weren't good and they weren't worth their draft capital. And that's a large extent of why people have this theory. But at the same time, we've seen it where they just naturally players begin to get more injured as they get later into their career, especially running backs who every time they touch the ball get hit to some extent, whether that's getting tackled or that's just bouncing off a block and going 85 yards to the end zone. It doesn't matter. They're getting hit every play. So it's just one of these things where I don't think it's worth the risk from a dynasty perspective of holding on to them when you could sell out, 2 years, like I said, 2 years too early, realistically, maybe it's 5 years too early. But if you get the good value, your dynasty team is going to be better for it. And that's realistically what comes down to at the end of the day.
Yeah, but I just think, right, I'm going to bring up a little chart. This isn't the exact chart that I'm looking for, but if you look at one with more recent data, it'll say a similar story where if you look at the bell curve, at age 26 and 27, these running backs' production is generally higher than the ones at 22 and 23. Okay, very recently, yes, you have the Jonathan Taylors, but I don't think that's going to change for a guy like Jonathan Taylor. I think come 26, he's going to be better than he was potentially now-ish. I mean, maybe not this season because he had a crazy season.
Well, that's the point, is that at 26 and 27, these guys do still have some value where you can get out if you wanted to. Once they hit 28 or 20, once you hit 28 or 29, you can't do anything with them. They're going to die on your team.
My argument is that a lot of these running backs are having their best seasons at 26 and 27. If I sold LT too early, okay, cool, I might have gotten 3 first, but I might have lost out in the best season in fantasy football. Same thing with Sean Alexander, and the same thing with Fred Taylor, and the list goes on and on. Adrian Peterson after he tore his ACL. Like, I think that the fact of the matter is, for the really talented running backs, okay, yes, get out early on. I think Dalvin Cook potentially is a guy that I would get out early on because I don't think he's in that upper echelon of insanely talented running back. I think he's a good player. I'm not saying he's bad, but I just don't have him in that Hall of Fame gold jacket or borderline gold jacket caliber.
But that's my point is, at age 25, you would have said that selling Le'Veon Bell was an absolute horrible mistake. Coming off one of the greatest seasons in fantasy football history. It's one of those things where you don't know what's going to happen. Teams don't pay their running backs anymore. Very rarely do they actually go out and pay their running backs. And that's just something that
monster deal.
I mean, I feel like teams haven't paying their running backs though.
If I could jump in, I do. I think we just saw Joe Mixon, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara. I'm missing a couple other players. Just
Derrick Henry
extensions. Derrick Henry.
Right, but all these players they have outs in their contract. Right around that age of 26, 27, outside of, the horrible contract that the Cowboys gave Zeke. But
I just think where I'm you guys got me on the fence here, right? And I just I guess I have sincere questions in terms of okay, but how we know the difference between what could be Derrick Henry, where he's going off and going crazy now in his later years compared to when he much. Or say a Nick Chubb ends up being better in these next couple seasons. But how we differentiate those from the likes of Todd Gurley, who had crazy good season and was a great prospect, drafted high, was one of the best players at his position. How we differentiate that from a Melvin Gordon, who prior to even going to the Broncos was having one of his best seasons following his holdout on the Chargers. There's just a lot of these players right now who are really good prospects that
it goes back to the fact that all these teams are more willing to just use a two-headed backfield and not worry about having one guy that they're going to hand the ball off to 30 times a game, like they did in the early 2000s with all those guys you named, Edgar and James, Sean Alexander, all those guys that are just that's what they did in the early 2000s. They turn around and they hand the ball off to these stud running backs 30 times a game, and they let them just beat down the defense until they finally broke 1, 2, whatever it was. And the game has evolved. It's not the same game as the early 2000s.
Yeah, but I think that the players, their length of time in the league, and the fact that talented players, especially running backs, I don't think their bodies have changed to the point where come 26 they're done, especially if they're in a committee. To me, someone like Christian McCaffrey, right? He's getting discounted right now because of injuries and the fact that it's starting to get to that age where people are saying, hey, this is going to be his peak value, so I could get out now. And instead of investing it's already happened to Zeke, Derrick Henry, it's going to be happening too. But I think that the overreaction has gone too far. I'm not saying that every single good old running back is going to produce, right? What I'm saying is that the community is wildly overreacting to a running back turning 26, and you might be able to get running backs for way cheaper than you should be who could potentially have their best years yet. And that doesn't mean I'm saying go out and buy Zeke, because I think that Zeke is one of those dudes. The guy looks fucking washed, right? The same thing happened with Todd Gurley. It's not like a mystery at that season after Todd Gurley when he went crazy that he wasn't as good.
That proves. I think all those guys you just named prove my point. You just named Todd Gurley, who had one of the greatest seasons in fantasy football history. Zeke had one of the greatest seasons in fantasy football history. Christian McCaffrey, same thing. And all these guys to come 25, 26, 27 are now guys that everyone's like, oh, their value might be too low because everyone's discounting. There's a reason. There's a reason. And we've seen it in the NFL shies away from these injury-prone backs, and once they hit that age, it just starts to happen naturally, and they're not going to pay them. And then these guys are going to become part of a committee and not be worth what they were, and you can't get anything for them. That's just how it is, and I understand why you could say that. And you have guys like Alvin Kamara, who we haven't seen it yet. He had his a little bit of injury, but nothing too bad. But now without Drew Brees, without Sean Payton, what happens to him? No one knows. And it's one of those guys that, like, he's 26. He could still have a great year, or he could turn to Zeke. Like, it's one of those things. You don't know, and I'd rather take the value and just cash out.
All right, well, let's play a quick game here, and we'll see if we're overreacting and underreacting. I'm going to give you guys names, and you're going to tell me at these players, would you buy them or sell them for 101? Like 101 in this draft, right? CMC. Are you buying or selling CMC with the one? So we're buying CMC with the 101. Jake?
Nope.
Sal?
Give me
You're
Brees
selling
Hall.
CMC for 101?
Give me Brees Hall.
I'd be on team buy. Alvin Kamara.
Brees Hall.
Are we just going to use Brees Hall? We could use Brees Hall for this. I think he's.
I mean, that's 101. So.
Okay.
Well, the suspension thing is a little weird, but that's close. I think I'll go Kamara.
Dalvin Cook.
Brees Hall.
Brees Hall.
Joe Mixon.
Brees Hall.
Interesting. Derrick Henry.
Brees
Brees
Hall.
Hall.
Brees Hall pretty easily. So in terms of that, I think we might be overreacting.
Exactly.
I think I'd rather have most of these players than Brees Hall, because like Brees Hall is a fine prospect, but I don't think he's anything that special. Like I'd comp him more to. For me, I definitely wouldn't have had David Montgomery. I mean, I'd say in terms of like not from an actual like play style or anything, like yeah, it's probably about value wise. David Montgomery is where I'd have him. Like I'm not going to ever slot him above in terms of a prospect above the likes of a Jonathan Taylor or DeAndre Swift, who I was very high on, even the likes of Javonte Williams. But once we get after those guys, I think that's right around where I'd have Brees Hall. But if you're telling me I could go and get a Christian McCaffrey who, when he's healthy, can put up 25 points a game and just break fantasy, I'd rather just risk it on the Christian McCaffrey because then I could win.
To clarify, I think you can get more than 101 for Christian McCaffrey, and I think that's the problem here.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Is you can get Brees Hall and more. And then at that point, I'm 100%.
Well, I mean, let me just check real quick and just see how much more is more.
Yeah,
So
but my argument is more so geared towards a guy like Nick Chubb, where
you can only get a late second on top. Sorry, Frank. Like a Ron Jones.
I look at Nick Chubb's value and the fact that there are people that, if you look in the Dynasty sub and you look on Twitter, there will be people that will complain that Nick Chubb has now reached that age where he's a super old running back. And if you're able to get those concerns priced into your acquisition of Nick Chubb, well, that's a fantastic buy because to me, I don't really care about that.
If you can go out and get Nick Chubb for 112, yeah, I might do it. Yeah, but I'm not
112. Like, where does that coming from? Where's 112 coming from?
I'm just thinking like you're a contender. 110, 112, whatever it is, 108, somewhere in there. You made the playoffs. You need another piece, and you want to go get Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I think you're never getting Nick Chubb for 112. I mean, call me biased. I have Nick Chubb in our home league,
and I like Nick Chubb. I'm not saying anything bad about Nick Chubb.
I'm not trading him for Brees Hall. Like that might be crazy, but I'm not trading. I thought about it. Okay, like it doesn't make sense for the person in our league who has the 101. But I was like, would I offer Nick Chubb for this 101? And to me, just the risks of Brees Hall, I don't know where he's even going. I don't even know if he's my 101 currently. Just the risks of what he's worth and what I think Nick Chubb could be, where we've seen Nick Chubb has in 4 straight years put up. Okay, in 3 straight years has put up top 10 running back numbers. He was running back 15 in his rookie season. I I don't know. This is a guy who does not have that kind of wear and tear like all other players do. I think this is an offense that we've seen runs better when they go through that run game. Even a healthy Baker Mayfield, I think, should help this offense. To me, I think you do have another 3-4 good years, like really solid years, where he outproduces Breece Hall. And then what happens is I traded Nick Chubb for less production, and now I have another player who's now 25 years old, 26 years old after the 3-4 years that is not going to get me much. He's going to be the likes of a David Montgomery in a year, which I don't think will be that crazy. Like, people might be saying he's a good buy, but he's a good buy because you could get him for 203 in the draft. I don't know. Give me the production now is basically what I'm saying. Which
Yeah,
is
I
not
agree.
typically what I go for, right? If this was a different year where we had the Bijan Robinsons and I don't know, give me any other name. Even
Tank
Tank
Bigsby and all
Bigsby, he's
that.
close. Trayvon Henderson is someone
Yeah.
like those guys, like give me those guys, right? But this is just a year where we don't have those kind of prospects. We don't have those prospects. And Nick Chubb was one of those prospects. So I'd rather just have Nick Chubb.
Yeah, like I feel like my argument is more so like, okay, if I have an Antonio Gibson, yeah, I would love to try and move into a Nick Chubb and some, if possible, because apparently you
Sure,
could
I
do that
love
in
that
keep trade
move.
cut.
That's fine. That's not
And
the
and like if I'm a team that needs a running back, I can go and pick up one of these fantastic running backs that I'm pretty damn sure is going to produce for not a crazy amount. Like, yeah, you have to shell up some value to get him. It's not like you can get him for free, but like you can get some really good production for cheaper than I realistically think you should be. And it's going to be player dependent, and it really, not every 26-year-old is the same, right? You could go and spend a lot less on Zeke than you would have to go and spend a lot on freaking Nick Chubb, right? But I still think that a lot of these points, and that's one of the reasons why a guy like Aaron Jones could potentially be a decent little buy, is that the age stuff is just so priced in. And if you get the right team that is like, I need to get younger, I can't have this guy, you could get a pretty favorable deal. You have to play your cards right, obviously, but I just think it's definitely something to keep in mind. And the young players ADP is rising every single year, which I think is valid, right? In startup drafts, I want to draft young, but when I'm buying players, moving these young, flashy players into these kind of boring, stable, producing assets that are blue chip prospects and blue chip players, I think it's good moves that can net you value and winning.
I like that logic. Yeah, it seems like we may have. I think we say this every year though, that we may have stretched a little too far into the age overproduction. The age. All right, are we
Well,
good
it's
to move
all
on to?
relative too.
Yeah,
Because like I mean, like with the receivers, I've said it on the pod before, I like to break them down into zeros, ones, and twos. So if I'm trading, uh, if you're really getting that upside level prospect and you're trading a one for it or multiple ones for it, like, okay, that's fine because you want that upside. But if I'm trading like a guy whose ceiling is like 215 points on the season, right? Like, yeah, that's a great year, but he's valued like he's going to do that for the next 9 years. And he has a higher ceiling than that. Like, there are plenty of young receivers, it seems like in Dynasty right now, that are valued like that. Like, they're going to be nasty, and they're going to be nasty every year. When, if you look at it with a wider lens, the volatility of the receiver position is really not that much crazier than, or less crazy than the running back position. I just think that a lot of the running back volatility has been because some of these running backs recently have just been kind of bad, and someone's got to run the ball. Like,
wait, would you guys give up a CD Lamb and a Devontae Adams for Justin Jefferson? That's a fair trade according to Keep Trade Cut.
I don't know. I don't
I might.
I
I
would.
like Justin Jefferson a lot, so I might, but it's close.